Hi, legal besties. My name is Allison Melendez,
And I'm Michaela Dixon.
and welcome to Ladies in Law. We are here today with our special guest extraordinaire. If you could please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Darysa Bello.
And Darysa is going to be talking about all kinds of things today. We're so excited. Thank you so much for being on this episode. For anyone tuning in for the first time, our podcast is focused on our experiences as female professionals in a heavily male dominated field, as well as just leaning into your softness and continuing to show up as your authentic self. And we're so excited to have Darysa here. She's joining us from New Jersey. Very exciting. So, our first East Coast guest.
Well, thank you
Yeah,
for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
we're so excited to have you, and we're really looking forward to just exploring who you are and what you do in this two-part series that we get to have you for. And so, just to start us off, do you mind just telling us a little bit about what you do, how you got there, and a little bit about the population that you serve?
Of course. I'm an attorney. I represent children in abuse and neglect cases in New Jersey. And I decided to become an attorney. I think it was in high school. And I think it was of my desire of helping people during difficult times. So yeah, that's currently on the field that I am.
And when we first spoke with you, I know that it was I kind of assumed that when you say, helping children in these I typically thought of would be a criminal case, but it's not. Your line of work is family law, correct?
Yeah, so it's actually family law. A lot of people assume that is criminal law just because I work for an office that is called Office of Law Guardian, but that office is under the Office of Public Defender. So when you say Office of Public Defender, you automatically think that is criminal. But under the Office of Public Defender, you have the criminal section, but you also have the family section, which it is composed of Office of Law Guardian, who only represents minors in child abuse and neglect cases, and you also have the Office of Parental Representations, who represent parents in these type of cases.
Yeah, and I think it's for people that are not too familiar with this kind of area of law. I wasn't familiar with it, so I think it's just if you could kind of touch on what you're doing on a day to day. Like, are you in court every day? Are you doing paperwork? Are you with clients? Because I think one of the things that came up in our conversation was just being able to explore different types of law and really understand, like, especially when you're in law school, that there's so many avenues you can go down. So if you could kind of just walk us through, like, what's your day to day like, what do you do, and maybe that'll help someone out there to learn a little bit more about your field.
Of course. So I will say that 95% of my job is litigation. So it's a lot of court hearings. The way a case starts is like, for example, when the Department of Child Protection removes a child from their home due to abuse or neglect, or in other type of cases that we have, the department doesn't remove the children, but they are involved with the family in court to provide services for that family and to provide support. Um, so normally, when at least here in New Jersey, when the Department of Child Protection removes a child from their home or intervenes with the family, um, the child gets appoints an attorney by the court. So when I have a case, you have an attorney that is representing the state, is representing the Department of Child Protection. Then you have myself, which is the attorney representing the children. And you also have the attorney for the parents who represent the parents in these type of cases. So normally when the Department of Child Protection remove a child from the home, because it is a constitutional right, you have that constitutional right as a parent, they have to file a complaint in court, and then it is the judge who decides whether removal is necessary or not. If removal is necessary, that's when then we start the case. So I'll say that, and then you after that we have follow-up hearings, and then always the first goal is reunification. You want the parents to remediate the circumstance that led to the removal. And you have to give the parent times to remediate those circumstances. So always the goal is reunification. We have follow-up hearings to monitor the parents' progress. And then unfortunately, there are some cases in which we have to find an alternative plan because those circumstances are never remediated. And when I said alternative plan, it could be adoption, it can be independent living for minors that are, reaching the age of 18. So it could be custody with a relative. So we then have to find alternative plans for the minors.
I have such immense respect for the work that you do, truly. I think it sadly is very easy for children to be kind of lost in the shuffle of litigation. I think a lot of adults tend to think that they know better than children or know what a child needs more than what that child knows that they need. And I think at the end of the day, you are giving a voice to these children and letting them know that their voice matters and deserves to be heard. And I respect what you do so much. And I wish this was more of a universally applied position in all states, because I know not every state does give a child an advocate, correct?
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for what you said. And yes, you are right. Not every state has an attorney that represents the child. And I truly hope that change, because that having when the child has an attorney, the attorney-client privilege applied the same way as you're representing an adult. Um, and then having representing that child, you are that person that advocates for their wishes when they're old enough to say what they want. I help them participate fully in the court proceedings because they have the right to be present at every hearing. They have the right to speak with the judge. I help them understand the legal proceedings. And I feel that even though, of course, the Department of Child Protection was what is best for the child, is the child who, nobody knows best what is happening in the home than the child. And when the child has an attorney and has a lawyer that knows that is going to advocate for what they want, it makes a huge difference. So I truly wish that my position, eventually exists in every state.
And what's fascinating too is, I mean, I don't know how long your average case spans, but for us, we see sometimes cases go for a couple years. And when you're looking at that in the time frame of a child's life, like they could be going through adolescence, like there could be significant changes. And so I guess it's so interesting from your perspective because you're working with the children and you're getting to see them grow. And how has that been? Do you find that rewarding? Is that something that you really enjoy as part of your job, having that one-on-one connection with such a young person?
I do. Is one of the parts that I most enjoy about my job. Establishing that connection. It is very rewarding. Even though there are very emotional cases, and sometimes you hear stories that affects you. Um, the fact that you're making a positive impact, or you're trying to make a positive impact on the child, makes a huge difference. It is extremely rewarding, but it is very emotional too. So I feel that um, I have learned. I've been doing this for 7 years now. But at the beginning, it was very difficult because we're dealing with children, so it's extremely emotional. So you have to find ways to um, relieve relieve some stress and not bring all that for that to affect you emotionally and take it personally.
Yeah.
um yes.
I think I'm trying to sit here and kind of think about like Allison and I, when we first did like the first season of the podcast, was like, let's try and make the law digestible because I think attorneys are very quick to talk in the acronyms and use words that not everyday people uses. And I feel like we try really hard with like our clients to make the law digestible also, where it's like, okay, this is the next step. This is what that means. And I'm trying to think about how I would implement that with a child and trying to teach them the process and how it works, but also make it make sense to where they are in that chapter of their life. Do you find difficulty doing that, or in the 7 years has it been something that has kind of become second nature for you?
So I have to say, when I started this job, we received a lot of training in how to interview children, because you have to take into consideration not only their age, but whether they have special needs and things like that. Um, so we receive a lot of training, but I feel with the years you kind of learn, and every child is different. But I think it is very important to not push the child. What I'm trying to say is, like, for example, one of my uh, the role of my job is that I visit the children in their home or at school, and I speak with them privately. When we having that first meeting, in which I want to be able, I normally, my first meeting, explain, I'm your lawyer. I try to explain in a way that they understand what a lawyer means, what a judge is. But sometimes it's not only me that is going to go and see the child and ask them a lot of questions. It's going to be the Department of Child Protection asking them questions, the caseworker. We have also volunteers. So there's a lot of people asking them the same questions. So on my first meeting, I just try to get to know them. And if I ask something and they don't want to talk, I respect that and say, it's okay if you don't want to talk. And then I will schedule another visit and then try to build that rapport and not push them to talk. Another thing that works is like asking open-ended questions. So you once a child start talking, don't interrupt. Normally, let them, because then they are going to eventually, tell you what you need to know in order to represent them. So yes, it's definitely something that I have learned through the years. But every child is different, and you have to consider, whether they have special needs and things like that.
And also, I think one thing that if you could share with the listeners that you were telling us is to make them kind of feel comfortable. You tell them like, listen, I'm technically working for you. Like, you're my boss.
Yes, yes, I remember I mentioned that before. So I tell them that every time I go to see them. I say, I always say, if you don't want to talk, that's fine. But then the judge is going to ask me, what does your client wants? And normally, I explain to them that my job is to advocate for them, right? And because it's my job to advocate for them, and I have to tell the judge whatever he tells me, that they are my boss. And then when I said that, they look at me and they're like, really? And I'm like, yes, you're my boss. And that makes them, for some reason, make them feel that they have power. Like, oh, I have my own lawyer,
I'm
That's
valid.
pretty, that's pretty cool. So yes, that definitely makes them feel like they have some control.
I mean, you're probably one of the first attorneys that they've ever met in their life. And so it's just, I'm sure it's very impactful as a young child, especially like just to see someone there in your corner and then hopefully, there's a positive resolution at the end of the case. But have you had anybody reach out, like prior clients that are like, you inspired me to be an attorney, like I would love to do what you do someday?
Yes. Actually, I had a client for a couple of years. Her case got resolved. It was dismissed, and yeah, she's currently in law school. So that
Oh,
makes me,
yay!
yeah, I have amazing stories, and that makes me feel, you know, so I'm so proud of her, because she went through a lot, and the fact that she's now in law school is just amazing. Like, so proud of her. So yeah,
I
that
think
Wow.
that's also probably such a testament to the kind of advocate you were for that child, too. Because I think it's way more prevalent to hear people's horror stories within the judicial system and not being
Mhm.
heard, or it just being not a good experience. And the fact that you gave their voice power and meaning and allowed it to be heard is so inspiring, because it's like it sounds like you truly inspired them to be like, I want to make this difference, like for an individual the way that you did for them, and that's really powerful.
It is. And I think just hearing how you approach speaking with a child, like that's some of the things you were talking about, like listening, providing an open environment. If they're not ready to talk, like scheduling another meeting. I think those are things that we kind of talked about in another episode that work for us as well. And I think it just goes to the testament of like you truly are an empathetic listener and an active listener. And I'm sure that helps you immensely when you're trying to get these children talk about traumatic things. You know, these are not heavy or light topics. And I think you definitely have those skills where you're just very empathetic to talk to. And I'm curious, do you, in your field, specifically working in this division, do you see a lot more female attorneys than in potentially other areas of the law?
Yes, there's definitely more female attorneys, in my field than male attorneys. For example, as I mentioned before, I work with the Department of Child Protection and also with Office of Parental Representations. In those agencies, you can see, pretty much 50-50 or more male dominated, but in my office that we represent children, I'll say that it's more females.
Wow.
Yeah, I think just in listening to the way that you show up, it's really inspiring the way that, like, I think so often attorneys expect to be able to ask clients questions and that they're just going to open up right away. And it's like you are sitting there and asking them to talk either about a trauma or an experience that they might not have even opened up to someone that's like in their trusted circle yet. And for all intents and purposes, at that point, you might feel like a complete stranger to them. And it's like, I think the way that you go about the process, where it's like, it's a very trauma informed approach of just like, I'm going to validate your experience. I'm going to be here when you're ready to talk about it. I'm here to build that trust. And, I think it's like, I'm going to earn your trust. Like, I don't expect you to just give it to me freely. You don't, I mean, at that point, you probably have an idea of their experiences to date and why they are in the position that they are in. And so coming in with this, like, hey, you're in the power seat, control seat. You
Driver's
you
seat.
have the control. Yeah,
You're
the
in the
driver's
seat.
seat. Thank you. You are in the seat that has some power. You are in the driver's seat, and I think that that is amazing because there's probably so many times in that child's life where they haven't felt that way.
Yes, I feel, well, thank you for that. I feel that, you also, when you're speaking with a child, you have to do it in a way, for example, try to, if they're playing a game, I'm like, what do you want to play? Can I play with you? Or can we color together? It's different, of course, if I'm, because I represent children since newborn up until 21. So it's different when you're speaking definitely with teenagers. But then when they're younger, if you need to color a book, you're gonna color a book. If you need to play with them while you're asking the questions, that definitely is gonna help. Also, something that makes them feel, because I will say that a lot of my clients, they have the right to go to court. They have the right to speak with the judge. And sometimes, the other people involved in the case might not want the child to be there because they feel that they are things are going to be said that they don't want the kids to listen, but they have the right to be there and they already know what is happening at home most of the time. But I have clients telling me, I want to go to court, but I'm nervous. So something that helps is, I mean, I'm not the best at drawing, but what I try to do is like, do a drawing and shows them, okay, you're gonna have here the bench and this is the judge, and you're gonna have, when there's gonna be a table in which you're gonna have one person that is representing the state, and then it's gonna be me and you in this table, and then that makes them feel a little bit better, so that way when they go to court they don't feel like intimidating, because I mean, not only for a child, but court could be intimidating by for anyone. So yeah,
Oh, yes.
those little things definitely helps.
Yeah, well, I think that's like a perfect example of meeting them where they are at. You know, it's taking all of their life experiences, all of their life to date and meeting them where they are. And I think that's so important. And what you're doing is so great too, because it's, I think sometimes it's the fear of the unknown. It's not knowing what to expect. It's walking into this room with these people that have power over decisions that are going to impact your life, and going in there just completely blind to what to expect can be so overwhelming in a situation that already is overwhelming.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you kind of touched on earlier when we were chatting was, there's so many attorneys involved, and I think even just from like I'm an attorney, and I think that would be there's just a lot of moving parties, and so for a young child, that's obviously very overwhelming. Like you don't know who's who in the zoo. You're just trying to like grasp what's being said, and there's all these scary things. So being able to conceptualize it and at a level that they can understand is probably just so helpful. I'm sure they really appreciate that.
Yes, not for sure. And as I said before, like there's a lot of people going, if they're home, to their home, or if they're in foster care, to their placement, to ask the same questions, because everybody wants to know and everybody's trying to do what is best for the children, but is so many people asking the same questions, and there are uncomfortable questions, most of the time, like, do you want to go home, or do you want to stay in your current placement, do you want to be adopted or you don't want to be adopted, um, is there any relative that you will prefer to live with, are you having visits with your parents, do you like those visits, you don't like those visits, it's a lot of questions that they don't, most of the time they're tired of so many people coming in and asking those questions, which they need to ask, of course, but you know and I think everybody try to do their best, but it's difficult because you're still dealing, you're dealing with children.
Oh yeah. How do you deal with when emotions are heavy, and I'm sure this has happened. Maybe one of the children that you're representing starts lashing out at you, or is calling you late into the evening, and maybe they don't understand the boundaries. Like how do you deal with those difficult times that come up like that?
So that's an excellent question, and I think it's very difficult. And I have learned through the year to set those boundaries, because at the beginning it was very difficult. Like I felt like I needed to answer the phone at all times, and I used to give my personal phone, which I still do it. But I try to explain that, for example, I always say to my clients, you can call me, you can call me anytime, but like if I don't answer right away, it's because I try to explain to them I have other cases, I could be in court, and then remind them, you've been in court before, remember we were in court for your case, so I have other cases, or I could be in the field, because one of the things of my job also is to go and visit my clients, either at school, either at their home. So I said, you can call me, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And then I try to explain to them what is an emergency, what is not an emergency. So yeah, but I always encourage them to call me if they have any questions, or sometimes they just want to call me. It's not related to the case, they just want to talk, and I always said that's, I'm happy to do that as well, but try to explain to that I'm not going to answer every time, just because I have other cases, and I might be on the field. And also, in most of the cases, we always request a therapy. We request therapy for the clients, for the children. So that's another, an important component of the case, because they can have somebody else that is a professional to help them as well.
Yeah. I think this is something that like Allison and I always make a joke about with each other, is like boundaries is an ongoing journey, truly. And like there's so like sometimes boundaries will shift and move as we learn more, or as we see them getting pushed a little bit, or see that we can give more than we could when we first set the boundary. And I'd love for us to continue exploring boundaries in our next episode, just because I think this is a conversation that could span many hours. So let's wrap up this part one of our interview with you and explore boundaries in a little bit more in part two, which will be released in a couple weeks.
Looking
Thanks so
forward.
much for tuning in.
Thank you.